Today, we got LeShun Daniels back with us, the former Hawkeye running back. We take a look at the improvements in the run game and how can the Iowa pass game do anything to help this team out. Plus, we'll make our picks and preview the Gophers all today. Locked on Hawkeyes.
You are Locked on Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. I'm Trent, Condon. He's LeShun Daniels, and this is the Locked on Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked on Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you get podcasts. If you're on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Just takes a moment. Greatly helps us and helps us find more Hawkeye fans. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5. You'll get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On to get started. LeShun, good to see you again. The run game got going. A win against the Badgers. Boy, that always feels really, really good. Fun one on Saturday. I saw you tweeting a little bit, calling out, what do they call Sean Williams? Boogie? What's his name?
Yeah. Oh, Boogie. I think that's his Twitter or X handle, I should say. So yeah, he had obviously a really great day last week. It was big time, and obviously helping the Hawks get the win. So
that was fun to see. The 82-yarder, absolutely crazy. The longest rush from scrimmage for an Iowa football player in the Kirk Ferentz era. You have to go back to Tavian Banks back in 97. It was Cedric Shaw, I believe, the last time that Iowa had a run that long, which is crazy to think about. Now, you had a couple of long ones, including one against this week's opponent, Minnesota. You also had one against Northwestern called back, right? That awful call. But
yeah,
we've seen you make some big had some of those yardage taken. You'd be a little higher on the list without those called back runs.
Be a lot higher. I think I would have ended up rushing 1,200 yards as a senior. It would have been a pretty good year. But hey, it is what it is.
Well, we see the run game is improving, and not just the 82-yarder, which was a thing of beauty. LeShun using his slow down, just kind of hesitated a little bit. I think it was Liddell Betts mentioned that they'd been talking more with the running backs about you got to be more patient. This offensive line's getting better, and as it's getting better, you can show a little bit more patience back there. And I thought that was a really interesting thing, and you saw that on that play, the hesitation, the stiff arm, and then up the sideline, and the wheels to finish it off, which was great to see there. But they were also getting some chunk plays, something that we just haven't seen very much against the Wisconsin D over the past decade, is getting those 8, 9, 12-yard runs. Those were a little bit more prevalent than what we've seen in the past. So when you watch it, when you're looking at it, what has been the improvement? Why have we seen these improvements in the run game?
Yeah, obviously, the big deal is the offensive line is getting better, and I think everyone's has kind of already touched on that point. But see, they've been improving a lot, especially in the run game since the beginning of the year. They're getting on blocks and they're limiting. I think the biggest thing is that they're limiting as a lot of penetration from defensive linemen to allow now the running backs to actually be patient and take their time in the backfield and go ahead and decide okay, this is where the hole is going to be. This is where the bigger play is going to be. And so you obviously got to give a ton of credit to the offensive line, and obviously really self-evaluating themselves, and from each individual lineman to offensive coaches, obviously getting those guys to a point where you can obviously start to have success in the run game. So I feel like obviously that's really the main reason for the improvement. And then I see the guys are running hard. The guys are still running hard, and they're still focusing in on their keys. And I see a big part of why LeShun hit that 82-yard run the other day is because, again, focus on his keys. Obviously got a great block from a fullback, and then he was patient enough to wait for the hole to develop, hit it, and then create an explosive play from there. So when you're able to do those things and you're able to consistently get more than 4 yards of play, and then you get in a position where, hey, you don't necessarily have to go to third down, right? You get to a second and short, and then you convert, and now you have a new set of downs. Those are things that help your offense stay in rhythm, and they've been doing a pretty good job of that over the past couple weeks.
We look at this run game, the improvements there, but the passing game still a struggle. Second half, we see Deacon Hill go 1 for 4, 1 yard passing in the second half. Didn't throw the football in the fourth quarter, didn't throw it over basically the final 18, 19 minutes of the football game. Now, they didn't have to. They're working with the lead, and that's different. But I was in the driver's seat now in the Big Ten West, and there's going to be at least a game, if not multiple games, where they're going to have to make plays in the passing game to win it. It very well could be this week here. So, what do you do knowing that Deacon Hill is not an accurate quarterback? Those touch passes just aren't there. That is going to be a struggle. He doesn't have a ton of experience. What do you do? What do you kind of work on in the passing game? What can work with the way that they're currently constructed?
Yeah, it's a tough question. Great question. Obviously, if I had the answers, all the definitive answers, I'd probably be in the building coaching them, right? So, it's a tough question. Obviously, he's got to continue to get better in just your typical drop back passing game, whether it's from under center, from the gun, wherever, and see being consistent there and with his drops, and it's just technique from as he's taking the drop to put it on the receiver. But there's also obviously there's some things that obviously the coaching staff can help out with there, and that's obviously getting more into the play action game, which we already do a ton of when we throw the ball, but obviously gonna have to continue to lean on that because again, it does help clear up the picture a little bit for the quarterback. It kind of gets to see some of those run defenders out of the way. So to again open up that picture for the quarterback to be able to put it on the receiver and not have to think as much. And then obviously, doing whatever you can to get the ball quickly out of his hands, whether it's throwing a quick bubble to the receiver, throwing some slants, just some things to get the ball out fast, where he doesn't necessarily have to think as much. So you don't have to worry about, your typical drop back passing game when you're taking, 5-7 step drops, trying to hit the intermediate and deep areas of the field where obviously when it comes to being a quarterback, you gotta really be dialed in on the mental aspect of there before you can even think about obviously completing some of those passes. So those are a few things that the coaching staff, I'm sure, has already probably tried to touch on. There's probably some stuff that they've got in the game plan this week about it. And I think that's actually part of the reason why they do some of the empty stuff. I know that we kind of talked about that a little bit before we got on here, but it does help. It can help clear up the picture a little bit for a quarterback, where that's one of those formations, and then as well as your typical 3-by-1 formations where you have 3 receivers on one side, one receiver on the back side, because it's tougher. It's just a little bit more difficult for defenses to disguise coverages in that matter. So obviously, it's going to be dependent upon Deacon's comfort level within the offense, and I think he's getting more comfortable. But when you have the lead the way that the Hawks did the other day, and you're running the ball well, like I was not gonna put the ball in harm's way. They basically go into the park the bus type mode. So if that continues the way that it's been over the past few weeks, I wouldn't expect to see really an explosion in the passing game. Really, is obviously kind of rely on a lot of our basics in the play action game when it comes to passing the football.
Yeah, that 5 receiver empty set, it drives me crazy. Usually there's a running back on the field. Sometimes there's a couple of tight ends, and you can go shotgun. I completely understand that, the ability for the quarterback. Look, I was a middle school quarterback, terrible one at that. And I, I know out of the gun though, yeah, it's a lot easier to see things, to read things, to do that. So I get that part of it. It's just the 5 wide receiver to not have any threat of even a draw play, out of that set. With the way that I was constructed, it drives me crazy. But I think you explained it well, kind of the reasoning behind it. It This is the time to scrap it. Rip that one out of the playbook. Let's come back to it next year, because just that element of play action, the element of a run, I think it's so important for the way that they are constructed right now. We'll continue our conversation. LeShun, we mentioned a little bit earlier, of course, had a big run against the Gophers. What's the rivalry? LeShun, not from the Iowa area, not from Minnesota, being an Ohio guy. What did the rivalry mean? We will talk about that as we continue here. This is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Betterhelp. The show is sponsored by Betterhelp, and there's always those times where you thought things were good, but you stayed up at night, you couldn't get through it, you woke up in the middle of the night, your mind's just racing, and you're not exactly sure why. Like, You know what you should do, what's good for you, but you just can't get there. You can't get over the hump. Therapy helps you figure out what's holding you back so you can work for yourself instead of against yourself. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched up with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime at no additional charge. Make your brain your friend with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockdowncollege today. You're going to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockdowncollege. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel and the FanDuel Sportsbook. Well, we saw the new week of the NFL start up last night with a fun one in Thursday Night Football and a big week coming up this week in the NFL. Snap into the NFL action this season with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. And if you've been hearing LeShun and my picks this year, that sounds pretty good on the losing side. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get on the action. The app, it's super easy to use. So many options out there, too. Wide range of betting options. Of course, the point spreads. That's the simplest thing. They have over-unders. They have player props. They have teasers and parlays and so much more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockdown to kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Trent and LeShun back with you once again here on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. LeShun, let's get into the matchup this week. Another difficult game. Minnesota, has their own limitations offensively, but the game's going to be hard. It's going to be physical. PJ Fleck, though I don't like the guy. Phil Fleck just annoys the crap out of me. I mean, he's such an unlikable figure. The row the boat crap, all the cliches, it's about him. The way he leads the team on the field, sprinting out there like a dork. He just bothers me to the nth degree. But he has built a good football team. And we've seen some of these guys in the past that didn't have the football acumen. I think he does have that. Joe Rossi, the new defensive coordinator that took over 3-4 years ago, has really improved what they are defensively. They're going to run the ball. So for you, when you look at the Gophers, not just this year, but in general, your thoughts overall?
Yeah. Basically every single year, it's going to be a physical football game between them. See, we know that they don't like us at all, and frankly, we don't really like them either. But we know that they don't like us at all every single year, no matter what type of season that is going on between either program. Right? We know that this game is going to be a physical game. Both teams are going to come out; they're going to be ready to play, and you're going to get each other's best shot. Obviously, we saw that. We saw that last year. I mean, we saw it even in 2015 when we were a top 5 team in the country. They came out and played us extremely tough. And then even a few years back when Minnesota was an undefeated team, right? That was another, again, physical football game between the two teams. So that that this game it's going to be physical. That the defenses are going to come out to play, and offensively, you're really going to be looking for basically that one play, right? It gets late in the game where someone's going to step up, make the play offensively, to essentially put the team in a position to win the football game. So obviously, this is a big time rivalry. The history of this rivalry, it's probably the best rivalry trophy in college football. I mean, it's just everything about this game is super electric, and it's probably one of my favorite games that we play every single year.
Yeah, I mean, the pig is incredible. It's one of the best rivalry trophies, like you said, out there. And the background to it, I told you before we came on, I think everydayers, our listeners, will certainly know this. This is the biggest rivalry for me. It's not Iowa State. It's not Nebraska. It's not any Wisconsin. This is Minnesota for me. Ton of family in Minneapolis. Grew right on the correct side of the border here on the Iowa side of things. Went to Minneapolis so many times. Went to a ton of Iowa, Minnesota games, both growing up and then in college up there. Just always loved this game. And with that, this game this week, when you look at it, knowing that I was still limited. I mentioned Joe Rossi. I've been so impressed with what he has done with them defensively. And now you're even more limited than you were even a year ago in the passing game. What do you do? What do you scheme up here against this Gopher defense? One thing, they struggled to get off the field this year on third and fourth downs. The red zone defense hasn't been very good. But what do you scheme up against a team like this? It's going to be solid. It's going to be fundamentally sound defensively. What can you do to move the football this week?
Yeah, obviously a big part of it is it's a lot of this, a lot of the same tips we kind of say every single week, right? Staying on schedule, taking care of the football, all the boring stuff. But
Yeah.
like at the end of the day, like those are the things that win you this football game, that win you rivalry games. Like those are the things that's going to keep everybody on track. I mean, you look at um, some of the games over the past few weeks against Minnesota, the teams have been able to see again stay on the field, right? They've been able to run the football and um, uh, create the additional opportunities for the offense to go ahead and score points. I mean, you look at obviously Michigan, we know that they're phenomenal up front and phenomenal in the backfield, and they were really strong there. And then you even go back a few weeks when they played, Northwestern, or even when they played Louisiana. Like those teams were able to run the football and sustain some drives. So again, thankfully, that's been the thing that we've been able to do somewhat good at this year. So obviously, I would expect to continue that this week because again, we know the limitations in the passing game. So being able to run the football and stay ahead of schedule, and limit the amount of times that we're in third downs or even third and medium, because although Minnesota hasn't been great against it, we haven't been great on third downs either. So it's like something's going to have to give there at some point, and I would prefer us just to not be in that situation. So offensively, that is the thing that I'm going to be looking for us to be able to do, and that is to run the ball, stay on schedule, limit the amount of times where Deacon has to sit back there and in those obvious pass situations and have to go ahead and try to convert on third down. So
That is a pretty simple game plan. Easier said than done, though. And
mhm.
and I expect they're going to have 8, 9 guys in the box against those stacked boxes. What works? Outside zone, we know is almost a dead play anymore in this Iowa offense and the changes, and we've seen them evolve past that. So when you're trying to run the football against a stacked 8, 9 guy box, what works best? Is it a counter play? Is it something with the inside zone? What would you like most? And see if we're gonna do this 10, 12 times throughout the course of the game against a stacked box. What would you like to see?
Yeah, I know. Obviously, when we were playing, when we got stack blocks. Obviously, we were really good at outside zone plays. So that's what we did, right? We ran that pretty early and often against Minnesota. See, as you mentioned, they've evolved from that, and with that, because you can't really run away from people on your inside zone plays. Like typically, as I kind of mentioned, last week, you got to get the right look to be able to run those. Just because again, you end up being outnumbered
Mhm.
pretty easily, and then you just got a lot of free runners that can go ahead and make the play at the line of scrimmage, or at worst even in the backfield. So you don't really want that. So I would look to see more of those gap plays, looking for power
Mhm.
plays, looking for the counter plays, just because when teams do stack the box, like it's easier to run those because again you're just going down the gap. You're not really working to a zone, and you can essentially cut a defense in half when you're running those gap plays, because again you got guys that are blocking down, you got pullers coming around to kick out and lead through, so it essentially cuts the defense right in half, or at least where the aiming point is trying to attack for a certain play. Where the inside zones are going to end up coming into play is when you get into opportunity where we might be able to spread those guys out. Maybe we get to like a third and three, right? Third and four, and we're in 11 personnel or 12 personnel, but we got guys split out. There's not as many guys tightened up. Like that's where opportunities are going to be with the traditional run game, inside zone, and then obviously if we go to two back personnel where we run in 21 or 22 personnel, inside zone is there and available. But those are the plays that I would expect to see it on, normal down and distance. I would expect to see a little bit more gap, a little bit more power. If they're loading up the box, how we would anticipate them to. Obviously, if they don't do that and they, decide to give us, 7 man or even better 6 man boxes, right? I would expect us to get into some inside zones and get to that bread and butter, but I'm not anticipating that at all.
Yeah, I hear you there. Well, it's time to make our picks. We will do that as we continue here. LeShun and I both went 2-2-1 last week against the spread. Got the push on the Oregon-Washington game last week. We will try to be better. We'll make 5 picks of big college games, including Iowa, Minnesota this week. We'll do that as we continue. This is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Birddogs, and though the weather is cooling down out there, they still have great products for you. Not just their shorts that are incredibly great. They give you that slimmer look through the thigh and leg, giving you a sculpted look. Birddog shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but fit way better. And not just shorts, they got pants as well. I love the versatility of these pants. You can look great. You got a meeting, you got a place to be, maybe you're going out after work. Whatever it may be, they got you covered there. But also, you can use them casually, just lounging around, maybe on the golf course, a little chill in the air, want to be out there. Think shorts maybe is not the right call. The Bird Dog pants are excellent as well. Bird Dogs use anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long in all the right practices. What you want to do right now is go to birddogs.com/lockedon or enter the promo code Locked On College. Again, that's birddogs.com/lockedoncollege or the promo code Locked On College at checkout. You're going to get a free Bird Dogs water bottle with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedoncollege for a free water bottle at checkout. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. Trent and LeShun back with you one final time on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. As always, thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Time to make our picks. Kissing our sisters 2-2-1 last week. Let's get no pushes this week. Let's at least move on past that. On the season, LeShun 15-17-3. I am 14-18-3. A game back in the standings. We're trying to battle our way back to Mount 500. Fun slate of games, and it'll start early. Big noon kickoff as Penn State goes on the road for Ohio State. The Buckeyes and the Nittany Lions. Obviously a series lately that has been dominated by Ohio State. You still have the T-Box, though, LeShun, with the lead. Kick us off. Who do you got as the Nits are getting 4.5?
Yeah, this is going to be a great one. Super excited. Obviously, this is a pretty big deal in terms of Big Ten and playoffs implications here. See, Penn State has been extremely good offensively, and honestly, they've been actually really good defensively as well. It hasn't been talked about as much, I feel like, but defensively, I feel like they've been really strong both against the pass and the run game. And the offense is driving the engine. They've been able to run the football extremely well. And Drew Aller has been extremely good passing the football. And they also have covered every single game this year. I know that they haven't played any, world beaters up to this point in time in the season, but they've been really good against the spread and have really dominated every single point, doing what they can do up to this point as a top-ranked team. So I'm feeling that they can cover that 4.5. I don't know if they pull it off. I don't know if they pull off the win, but I feel like they'll definitely be able to cover that 4.5.
Well, this summer when we talked, LeShun, you knew how high it was on this Penn State team, and now it's time to lay out my cards, right? And I got to go with Penn State, though. I don't feel great about it. And maybe it's the environment. That Ohio State defense, you mentioned it, they're really, really good, and they've improved so much. Jim Knowles in his second year, and that's when his teams defensively have always made big jumps, and they're certainly doing it this year. That does leave me concerned, but, oh God, it's got to happen at some time. You'd think for Penn State. I mean, this is the first time in the James Franklin era that 1 through 22, I think Penn State's better. I think this is the first time they've had an advantage at the quarterback position. This has been a rarity. Now, we got to see if Drew Aller can actually make some plays down the field, because you're not going to be able to dink and dunk and have 12, 14 play drives in Columbus multiple times against them. I just don't see that happening. It worked against Iowa at home. I don't think it's going to work against this Ohio State team, but I'm going to keep it out there. I got Penn State as well, grabbing the 4.5. Pick number 2. I got to lead off this one, and Alabama, Tennessee. I've been to this game before. I went back there. It was early in the Saban era. It was 2009. I was wearing my Hawkeye hoodie down there. Iowa was undefeated at the time. All these people, third Saturday in October, what are y'all doing down here? And I said, well, we're just scouting you for the national championship. And they, they got a kick out of that one. It was really fun. That was also the day of the Michigan State, Iowa, when Marvin McNutt got the touchdown to win it in walk-off fashion against Sparty. And what a great one that was. So we got back that night and were able to watch the game. But been there. It's a great environment. It's incredible scene down there. After what Tennessee did to them a year ago, that was an incredibly tight game. It could have gone either way. Tennessee got it and ended the long losing streak. The Saban team's improving. Now, their offensive line stinks. Caden Proctor's been a disappointment down there. Their offensive line as a whole. And this Tennessee defense is a whole lot better, certainly, than it was a year ago. I just don't know how they score. I've never been a Milton fan, their quarterback. I'm going to lay it here. A little more than a touchdown. Give me Alabama minus the 8.5.
Yeah. Yeah, I was kind of going back and forth on this one. Obviously, yeah, like they've been very inconsistent. Really throughout the entire year. Obviously, we saw them lay an egg against Florida. We saw them, play extremely well against South Carolina, and then we watched them last week, and they're against A&M. So it's like you don't know exactly what team you're going to get, and the fact that they are going on the road to Alabama, knowing that they lost. That they beat Bama last year. I know that for a fact. Nick Saban is making sure that the team is aware of that, and they're going to come out and they're going to play an extremely high level. I feel like they do that every single year after they drop a game against a team. Like they come back that following year and they really kind of put it on them. And I'm really kind of expecting the same thing from them this year because, again, they know kind of what's at stake at this point. They know that they can't drop any more games to really be in a position to compete for a national title. And so this is the game that Alabama's really, I think, going to set itself apart up to this point in the season. So, give me Bama.
Bama, 2 for 2. We're on the same side in our first two. Let's see if it continues. Back to the Big Ten. Michigan State playing host to Michigan. We got the cheating Wolverines continue to cheat with Jim Harbaugh. Hey, is that a big deal? Quickly on that front, LeShun, do you see that as a big deal? Does everybody do it? I mean, it was just, I don't know. For an outsider, that seemed like such a weird story yesterday.
I mean, it seems weird. But to be honest, I feel like, again, I didn't play defense at a high level, at the college or NFL level. So I don't know like how much sign stealing actually goes on. I'm sure it does go on. Like I'm sure every single team does that in some way, shape, or form. I don't really know like all the explicit details about it, but I don't think it's that big of a deal because I mean, like you can get an idea of it watching the TV tape or even the all 22 tapes that you use to scout the team in general. So like you can get an idea of like kind of what signals and stuff are going on. But personally, I don't think it's that big of a deal. So
all right, let's get into the game. 24.5. It's a big number. Michigan has been blowing out all comers here. Sparty, we saw them a couple of weeks ago in Kinnick Stadium. Obviously, a lot going on with the firing of Mel Tucker. Big number here, 24.5. What do you got?
It's a tough one. Because again, this is another rivalry game, and when it comes to rivalry games, you kind of got to throw everything out up to this point. Usually, like when teams are not necessarily close, but like where one just isn't significantly worse than the other. But the way that Michigan has been playing up to this point in the season, and the way that Michigan State has been playing up to this point in the season, I mean, I think they're on like a 4-game losing streak or something like that, and obviously lost a tough one on the road last week against Rutgers after being up, I think, by like almost 20 points. Like, personally, I think Michigan's probably going to try to get out, score early and often to take the crowd out of the game as much as possible and really try to pull away there. But with the line being that big, I feel like because it's a rivalry game, Michigan State will be able to keep it close enough to the point where they don't get completely, ran out of the stadium. So give me the Spartans.
Grabbing the points and making 3 for 3 on the same side on this one. My power numbers have it 19.5. I see a ton of value in this one. And I just wonder about the headache, that is going to be happening this week with Michigan. Now this extra layer to it, I put that on there. Spartan Stadium is going to be fired up for this game, a night game, something that I think I heard that this has never happened, at least in Michigan State, that it's been a true night game with Michigan State. So it's going to be a charged up environment out there. I'm going to grab the points as well. Wrapping it up, another top 25 matchup. It is Duke on the road at Florida State. I mean, it's very difficult to handicap this game without knowing what Riley Leonard's going to be able to do, the Duke quarterback. I mean, they have no shot. And because of that, I'm taking Florida State and laying the points because we just don't know, even if he does play, how limited it is. So it's a little north of 2 touchdowns, but I'm still going to lay it. Give me Florida State.
Yeah, I don't want see. So I don't want to go with you because like we're all like on the
Yeah.
same page right now. And I was leaning that way, but I don't know. I mean, obviously, if Riley Leonard doesn't play, it's a totally different ball game. They're not gonna be able to keep it close whatsoever. But if he does play, no matter what, even no matter how limited he is, he's obviously a game changer for that football team, and I feel like they'll be able to compete. Right, they'll be able to compete. I feel like obviously Duke is going to be much better overall as a team than really almost every opponent that they've played so far this year. Maybe outside of Clemson, like talent wise, but I feel like Duke has a good football team even outside of Riley Leonard. So like I feel like they'll be competitive even though it's on the road at night. So give me Duke. I feel like they'll compete even if Leonard doesn't play. So
And we wrap things up. Minnesota getting 3.5 against Iowa. I saw yesterday there was, for less than a minute, that number over under got down to 30 before the buyback happened and got back up to 30.5 very quickly. But this thing is cratering. It's one of the lowest totals we've ever seen in college football over the last 3-4 decades, as far as most databases go back here. But we're talking about the point spread here. Gophers getting 3.5. What do you got, LeShun?
yeah. It's really, yeah, as I kind of touched on earlier, let's see, the run game is going to be very important this week for the Hawks. Staying ahead of schedule, limiting the amount of times that you get in, third and medium, third and long, where Deegan has to sit back there and be in an obvious passing sound situation. So I am anticipating that Iowa is going to build upon their run game success over the past few weeks against the Gophers. And that's a thing that's going to really propel these guys over Minnesota and really put them in a position where it's not going to hopefully come down to a last second, win against these guys. So give me the Hawks. I feel like feeling good about them, and I anticipate they come out and play extremely well.
I hate PJ Fleck. I hate the Minnesota program. I have a bad feeling. And we brought this up earlier in the week, LeShun. It has a bit of a feeling of 2021, 2 years ago, after the
Mhm.
win against Penn State, where a lot of people are starting to buy back in, right? And I don't know how they're doing it, but even the national media, and yeah, the jokes are out there, but people are also kind of looking back and say, man, this is amazing. And then they went out and just looked absolutely brutal against Purdue that following week. And I have a little bit of that feel here. I'm going to grab the 3.5 in a low scoring game, get more than a field goal. I think that feels pretty good on top of it. So give me the stinking Gophers plus 3.5 to wrap things up. First three, we are on the same side. Penn State, Alabama, Michigan State. LeShun's got Duke and Iowa. I got Minnesota and Florida State. Those are our picks presented by FanDuel and FanDuel Sportsbook, a presenting sponsor here of Locked On. LeShun, enjoy it this week. We are 2 weeks away as well. You and me getting together over in Chicago before the Iowa game against Northwestern at Wrigley. We'll be doing a live show from Merkel's, the Hawkeye Bar in Wrigleyville on Friday, about 2 o'clock. We plan on getting started. So stop on out, hang out with us. Maybe we'll even get you a cocktail or two while we're over there. We'll have a great time, grab some lunch, grab some dinner, and going to be a really good time. Looking forward to that in a couple of weeks. But before that, we got one game, one bye. LeShun, we'll talk to you again next week, and let's beat those stinking Gophers.
Yes, sir. Go Hawks.